Morning everyone, welcome back to another vinyl pickup vid. So I've got 5 that I've recently purchased. I thought I'd talk a little bit about them and ultimately, of course, show you what they are. So straight on in there, it's a band. In fact, there's 2 bands out of these 5 pickups, which, of course, I know who they are and I know a little bit about them, but I've never really sat down and listened to them a great deal. I do have, for this particular artist and the other one that I'll show towards the end, or maybe even leave it until the end, I do have all of their stuff, all their albums anyway, that I downloaded illegally. But here's the thing, I wouldn't have bought it anyway, so the artist didn't lose out on any money. In fact, it's kind of worked in their favour, because now I am buying their records, so they are getting the money. So it does just go to show you that if you do download stuff, you know, illegally, then it can, like I say, work in the artist's favour. And always put a spin on things. So anyway, that band, which, of course I know their hits, let's just show you what it is. It's AC/DC, Rock or Bust, and I don't know if it's probably, is it gonna, kind of does, yeah, that kind of holographic sticker on the front, which looks really cool, so 80s, but I like it, it looks really good. And again, apologies if you can see the reflection, you can see me in the monitor there behind, but you get the general gist. Does that make it even worse? Probably does. Anyway, like I say, you can see what it is. So yeah, AC/DC, a band which of course I know all their big songs, most of us do, but I've never really sat down and listened to them, but I've always been a fan of Brian Johnson, you know, listening to his interviews. I think he's a good vocalist, but with AC/DC, and this album's just the same, and it's not a criticism, but you know what you're going to get. You know, everything sounds the same. They've got that distinctive kind of style, you know, when the first few chords come in and the drums, you know it's AC/DC, a bit like Green Day. You could even say maybe a bit like Oasis. There's a lot of bands who sound the same. That doesn't mean to say that it's bad, and it's certainly not a criticism. I like all them bands that I've just mentioned. But yeah, it's the same old, isn't it, really? But I like it. I think it's good. It definitely doesn't, you know, go to take it to a new level as far as I'm concerned. It's just the same old tried and trusted formula, which has served them so well for so many years. And obviously the band's gone through a lot of upheaval lately, with Phil Rudd, the drummer, being a little bit off his face. Unfortunately, there's Malcolm Young, who's suffering from dementia. And it's just, yeah, it's kind of crisis times. But it looks like the band are going to continue, obviously without Malcolm Young. I think Angus Young, or Malcolm Young, their younger brother, Steve, I think it's a brother, is it a cousin? I think it's a brother. Stevie Young is going to come in and work with the band, you know, permanently, for, well, at least for a while anyway. So maybe not that permanently. We'll see. But yes, AC/DC, Rock or Bust, a decent album, but very much same old, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, the next up, or the next one up, is a band, or an artist really, called Truise. A bit of a spoonerism, I think is the phrase, where people just kind of play around with the words. Obviously a play on Tom Cruise. Now, this doesn't have any vocals whatsoever. It's kind of a synth-pop, electronic, kind of chill wave kind of sound to it. I mean, what I like about it, in a very cheesy way, that reflection is terrible, isn't it, with the light and the sun? Alright, whatever, you'll just have to put up with it, I'm afraid. But yeah, what I like about it, in a very cheesy way, and it's going to sound like a backhanded compliment, you know, think of like a 1980s straight-to-VHS release, rather than going to the cinema, like a movie, like a science fiction kind of movie. And these are the kind of soundtracks you will get on an album like that, which maybe makes it sound appalling, but it's good. I mean, it's mixed with, you know, kind of a modern sound as well. As ever, what I'm going to do for every album that I'm going to show off, in the description box, I'll put a link to a track from each record, like I say, so you can see what it sounds like. It may not be the best one, the best track on the album, just a song, a track to give you an idea, a bit of an inkling as to what it sounds like if you don't know them. And maybe you may end up liking them, who knows. Now, this is a band or an artist who I wasn't that familiar with whatsoever. This is his second album, and but yeah, it was on Amazon. I think I was buying something. It could have been anything, so it's a waste of time guessing. But in the recommendations on the bottom of the screen, you know, on Amazon, or sometimes it's on the right-hand side, either way, this one was listed, and I thought, well, I'll just click on it. I opened up a window on YouTube, and I put in the album, and it started playing a few tracks, and I liked it, and I thought, well, let's buy it. But, you know, what have I got to lose? I think it was only about $12 at the time. So, yeah, I'm not going to complain about that. It is a good album, no vocals, very kind of chilled out, in an 80s science fiction-y kind of way. So, yeah, check it out. But maybe it's an acquired taste, possibly. The next one up is a band called Stars. I like the cover on this one. No One Is Lost. Now, I haven't showed you the back of these records, I don't think, but not that I'm sure you're too bothered about this. But yeah, Stars are a Canadian band who've been around a long time, 15 years or there or thereabouts. This is their 8th album, but it's only the first one that I've purchased. I think I may have a couple again that I've downloaded in the past to try and get into the band, but because I've downloaded so much stuff over the years, and obviously that's only ever expanding, it makes it very difficult to sit down. Just finding the time, isn't it? So I've always intended to sit down and listen to the digital stuff, but I never have, or not at any great length anyway. So this is the first time I've really sat down and listened to the band. And yeah, so you're going to get the typical kind of stuff like electronic music, kind of indie pop, a bit of indie rock in there as well. Yeah, I think it's a good record. Again, I'll put a track below in the description box, as I will for all albums, and you can see what it's like. But very good. And I love, and I've said this before, but I love kind of the neon lights. I'm a sucker for that kind of look. I know it's a bit cheesy, but I do like it. So that's Stars, Canadian band. Okay, so 2 left. Now the first one, you know, I started the vid by saying with AC/DC, I'm not really familiar with their stuff, other than, of course, the big hits. And it's the same for this band. Now this band, again, let's just dive on straight in there. It's Pink Floyd and The Endless River. A lot of hype, almost controversy, would you say, about this album? Now, for anyone who's not aware, this is the first Pink Floyd album since 1994's The Division Bell. And it's an instrumental, basically, apart from some brief vocals on a 1 or 2 tracks. But basically, for all intents and purposes, it is an instrumental. And it's made up, and it comprises basically of leftovers, outtakes, bits and pieces from The Division Bell. So you could say it's like an extended album, a part 2, if you like. But coming out, you know, 20 years later, it is really a brand new album. It depends which way you want to look at it. Is it a new album, or is it kind of part 2, like I say? Obviously, David Gilmour has gone in and added a lot more guitar tracks over, or guitar solos and bits and pieces on the top of it to give it that new feel to it. But yeah, it is kind of it's just a leftover from the 1994 Division Bell. If you like instrumentals, then you probably will like this. But see, I'm not a massive Pink Floyd fan. It's not because I don't like them. It's just, like I say, I've never really listened to them other than the big songs that they come out with, the ones which everybody knows. So to jump straight away, essentially, into this, to trying to get into Floyd for the first time by listening to this is very difficult. But at the same time, I quite like it. I feel you've got to be in a certain mood to enjoy it. But yeah, I quite like it. I don't quite understand what the hype is about. Maybe it's because the levels of expectations are so high because of what Floyd have done in the past. Maybe people are expecting a little bit too much. Maybe a lot of people didn't really understand that it wasn't really a new album as such. It was more just a fresh take on some outtakes and some old tracks which were knocking around from the last time they went in the studio. I'm not really sure. I feel a bit unqualified to talk about this because Floyd in general, like I say, I'm only just really getting into them. Always been aware of them, but only just getting into them. So take what I say with a pinch of salt. The general consensus really is that people are disappointed. But like I say, I think that's only because the levels of expectation were so high. But I'm quite enjoying it. But you do have to be in a certain mood, I think, to listen to it and to appreciate it. I know I do anyway. I mean, if I was to put it on now, I couldn't listen to it. You've got to be in that chilled out, relaxed mood. So anyway, last up is, and this kind of annoyed me. It's a ridiculous thing to get annoyed about. I want to say annoyed. I mean, I don't mean I wasn't livid and smashing things up, but it just momentarily frustrated me. But I'll talk about that in a second. The album is brilliant, and it's Blur, and it's Leisure. Now, this is Blur's debut album, which came out in 1991, but you wouldn't believe it, because at the back, again, can you see? Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it says 2012. Now, I know it says 2012 because it's a reissue. I think what the record label have done is they've reissued all of Blur's albums. So on the back it says 2012, which I could accept if it said 1991 as well, but it doesn't. There's just 2 mentions of 2012. It says Digital Remasters 2012, and then 2012 EMI Records Limited. Now, I know it's something silly to complain about, but for me, it should say 1991, and then the mention of the 2012 reissue. Because I can just imagine in the future someone turning around, whoever it may be, and saying, oh, I see you've got Blur's album, that came out in 2012. And then I'll be, of course, I'll be like, well, no, 1991. And they'll say, well, no, 2012. And I'll be like, well, no, it was 1991. And then, of course, we'll have to revert to Wikipedia, if it's still doing the rounds in the future, or an equivalent. And then I'll be proved right. I'll say, see, I told you it's 1991. But I wouldn't have to do that if it just said 1991 on the back. Which is, I know I'm being a little bit pedantic, and obviously just for the sake of it, I'm just being silly. it doesn't really bother me that much, but it's a minor quibble. But in terms of the album, really good. The cover has always kind of frustrated me, to be honest. I remember getting it in around about 92, 93 when I first got into Blur, and it just, I don't know, I didn't like the cover at the time. It's not because she's not an attractive lady. I'm sure she is. Well, she looks an attractive lady. And for anyone who's wondering, this album cover, I believe, is from like a 1930 swimwear promotional campaign ad. I don't think she's a particularly famous model, or maybe she is, I don't know. But that's where that photograph is from. So, knocking on for nearly 100 years, unbelievable. Time flies when you're having fun, I'm sure. But yeah, really good album. So I'm just looking at the back. I shouldn't have to anyway, because I've listened to this album so much over the years. But songs like She's So High, There's No Other Way, what else has it got? Bang. Just a brilliant album, their debut album, and I really love Blur. I think Damon Albarn as well is such a talented guy. I like a lot of his solo stuff, and I'm really pleased Blur have got back together. You know, what was it, 3-4 years ago? They released one single going back maybe 2-3 years ago, which was really good. Typical Blur. Again, a bit like AC/DC in a sense, or AC/DC, I should say, in the sense that they have a distinctive style, as I was mentioning before. When you hear them sing, when you hear the chords play, you can kind of tell it's Blur, but it's not a bad thing. So anyway, so that's that. A really good album. There's another couple of albums which I've got on the way. So I imagine, as I fight with these down here, I imagine that at some stage in the very near future, maybe even next week, certainly before Christmas. So yeah, it's probably going to have to be next week. I will do another vinyl pickup vid. But anyway, so that's that. 5 records altogether to add to the shelf over there. And thanks for watching. See you later.